doctors. We welcome you all for this webinar. I'll welcome Dr. Udayan Sarkar, who is going to talk on cause of uterine fibroids today. He is a professor and HOD, Department of ONG, NGM Medical College, and Honorable Secretary currently at Siliguri Option Gynae Society. So we are going to have a wonderful time with him by getting some informational insights from him on cause of uterine fibroids. Welcoming you, sir, and handing over to you. Thank you.
Thank you for the wonderful introduction. Let me try to share my screen first.
Sure.
Is my screen visible?
Yes, sir, visible enough. Okay. You can start, sir.
A very good evening to all my dear friends and colleagues. At the outset, I would like to thank Acumentis for having arranged today's program and also giving me the opportunity to wish all of you in advance happy Diwali and happy Kali Puja. Well, by now I think we are all tired of webinars, but today's webinar I think holds a bit of interest and importance for me, in the sense that I wish to mention a few things which is very important from our clinical point of view. So today's topic is low dose mifepristone in uterine fibroids. As you all know, medical management of uterine fibroids, it's a very important question, in the MBBS as well as MS level. Even 3 to 4 years ago, when we used to discuss about the medical management of uterine fibroids, apart from the hormones, progestogens, CO, combined oral contraceptives, intrauterine systems and all these things, we used to speak a lot about GnRH analogs. Okay, but with the advent of ulipristal and mifepristone, there has been a sea change in the medical management of uterine fibroid. But today, what I intend to do is first of all discuss about fibroids in a nutshell, then different clinical studies that has been done on mifepristone and its comparison with various other drugs also, and with placebo. Okay, and the latest information about ulipristal that also I wish to give to today. Well, these are nothing to be discussed. Okay, uterine fibroid is a benign tumor of muscular and fibrous tissues. Up to 40% women over the age of 40 have fibroids. And in Indian women, it's very common. Nearly 20 to 30% of Indian women in reproductive age group have fibroid uterus. And at any given time, nearly 15 to 25 million Indian women have fibroid uterus. So these varieties, all of us know, nothing to discuss: submucous, subserosal, intramural, cervical, pedunculated. And this is the FIGO system of classification from 0 to 8. We all know about this, nothing to discuss in details. The risk factors we also know: early onset menarche, late reproductive years, obesity, family history, and blacks are more affected than whites. Symptoms we are well aware: menorrhagia, metrorrhagia also for submucous fibroids, pelvic pain, dysmenorrhea. Occasionally this disabling pain causes a lot of anxiety to our patients. Anemia, infertility, bad obstetric history, bladder and bowel pressure for big fibroids, and relation of uterine fibroids with infertility as well as recurrent pregnancy loss. So if there is interference with sperm or ovum transport, enlargement and deformity of the uterine cavity, distortion of the cervix, distortion or obstruction of the tubal ostia, This increases the chance of miscarriage and increases the risk of obstetrical complications. So what are the management options? Surgical options, we know, hysterectomy, myomectomy. Non-surgical alternatives like uterine artery embolization and MR guided focal ultrasound, radio frequency, all these things. But don't think that they are absolutely risk-free. They also cause problems. And these are the medical options. Okay, so symptomatic bleeding and pain we can control with COCs, progestogens, oral or intrauterine system, those progestogen containing intrauterine systems, NSAIDs for pain, tranexamic acid, others. But etiologic treatment we can do with GnRH and selective progestogen receptor modulators. So these are the different drawbacks of surgical therapy and MR guided focal ultrasound and all these things. There are a lot of problems with these treatments, and there are limitations of medical therapy as well with the traditional drugs that we have been using since very long time. So with oral progestins, norethistron, there may be weight gain, acne, breakthrough bleeding, can increase size of myoma. Injectable progestins like MPA may cause, once again, irregular bleeding, PMS-like syndrome, loss of bone mineral density, and COCs also may cause BTB, not safe for long-term use, and can increase size of myoma as well. Now, what is the functional role of estrogen and progesterone? If we go to the etiology, nothing to discuss in details, but fibroids overexpress estrogen and progesterone receptors. And it is a fact nowadays and has been proved in various literature that progesterone plays vital role in promoting the growth of uterine fibroid. And progesterone receptor binding is 3 times higher in fibroid as in myometrium. Okay, so it binds to the progesterone receptors in fibroid, helps it to grow. And estrogen receptor expression on uterine cells is inhibited by the progesterone receptor pathway. So progesterone has dual action on fibroid growth. It stimulates growth by upregulating this protein, B-cell lymphoma protein BCL2, the epidermal growth factor, and it downregulates tumor necrosis factor alpha expression. So progesterone is believed to be physiological regulators of uterine fibroid growth by this mechanism. Okay, by increasing BCL2, it inhibits apoptosis, so thereby fibroid grows. By increasing EGF expression, it increases angiogenesis, helping in the growth of fibroid. And by decreasing TNF alpha, there is increased fibroid cell proliferation. So role of progesterone in promoting the growth of fibroids has stimulated interest in modulating the progesterone pathway. Thus, the birth of SPRMs in the treatment of fibroid, and they are innovative therapy in uterine fibroid management. See, SPRMs are a new class of progesterone receptor ligands displaying tissue selective agonist-antagonist mixed activity on target cells. And mifepristone is the first SPRM. Okay, as far as I remember, firstly we had used it for MTP purposes, medical MTP by medical methods. It is the first SPRM and has anti-progesterone action. It's a selective SPRM. Mifepristone for uterine fibroids have been studied worldwide. More than 35 clinical trials, including 24 Indian clinical trials. It can be compared with GnRH agonist in terms of efficiency. Okay, but then GnRH can cause much more side effects and problems, that is the menopausal symptoms in comparison to mifepristone. And the dosage is 10 milligram to 25 milligram are clinically evaluated strengths in Indian cities, in Indian clinical studies. And in studies, it decreased fibroid size considerably and decreased menorrhagia, dysmenorrhea, pelvic pain, and urinary symptoms as well. So what is the mechanism of action of mifepristone versus GnRH analog? If we see GnRH analog, it directly acts on the pituitary. We all know this. Okay, if the agonist initially upregulation and then downregulation of the pituitary, producing a hypogonadotrophic state with consequent reduction in estrogen and progesterone. So it causes a remarkable reduction in estradiol and progesterone. And ultimately what happens? It causes a medical menopause with all the associated symptoms like severe hot flushes, and we cannot continue it for long. If we continue it, there will be problems with BMD and all these problems. But mifepristone and SPRMs has different mechanisms of action. On fibroids, it has a direct action of fibroids, as we just mentioned, through progesterone receptors and different, TNF alpha and EGF and all these things, reducing their size through the inhibition of cell proliferation and induction of apoptosis. It has a direct effect on the endometrium, stops uterine bleeding, results in benign and reversible changes in endometrial tissue, and it causes PAEC. By now we all know about it, but it's a benign condition, progesterone receptor modulator associated endometrial changes, and it has a direct action on the pituitary as well. And different Indian clinical trials as well as ASRM trials have concluded that it is very, very effective. Like AICG 2016, it concluded mifepristone effectively relieves the fibroid symptoms and decreases the size, thereby avoiding unnecessary surgery in perimenopausal women. Low dose mifepristone, ASRM 2009 had said, had a shrinkage effect on the fibroids, which was maintained for as long as the medication was used. And 2013 ASRM concluded low dose mifepristone is efficacious in reducing leiomyoma volume and leiomyoma related symptoms of menorrhagia and dysmenorrhea. Well, this was in fact a study by which involved Dr. Alka Kripalani. It studied various factors by which low dose mifepristone treatment of abnormal uterine bleeding in fibroid reduced the bleeding, and the suggested treatment options for abnormal uterine bleeding, we are leaving all this. But if you see newer medical options, cilipristal acetate or low dose mifepristone currently was not available in India at that point of time when this was done. I think in the early, just after 2000 to maybe 2013. And textbooks highlighting the use of low dose mifepristone in uterine fibroids are, all the recent textbooks have highlighted the role of low dose, and there are several review and meta-analysis on this topic. And from the Cochrane Library in 2017, selective SPRMs for uterine fibroids were reviewed, and the author's conclusion was short-term use of SPRMs resulted in improved quality of life, reduced menstrual bleeding, and higher rates of amenorrhea than were seen with placebo. SPRMs may provide effective treatment for women with symptomatic fibroids, and SPRM associated endometrial changes are benign and are not related to cancer and are not pre-cancerous. Cochrane review in 2012, objectives to determine the efficacy and safety of mifepristone for the management of uterine fibroids in premenopausal women were studied. 3 studies involving 112 participants were included, and authors' conclusions were mifepristone reduced heavy menstrual bleeding and improved fibroid specific quality of life. There was another systemic review of mifepristone for the treatment of uterine leiomyoma. 6 studies involving 166 women. The dosage was from 5 to 50 milligram per day for 3 to 6 months, and the results were mifepristone reduced uterine volume by 27 to 49%, reduced leiomyoma volume by 26 to 74%, and reduced the associated symptoms like prevalence and severity of dysmenorrhea, menorrhagia, and pelvic pressure, and the rates of amenorrhea were quite high, range from 63 to 100%. So what are the Indian clinical evidence? We have quite a few studies on the Indian clinical trials of mifepristone in uterine fibroids. So among them, safety and efficacy of mifepristone in different doses, 10 and 25 for the treatment of uterine fibroids and to evaluate quality of life. It was a randomized double-blind clinical study. 100 cases were studied, and the dose was 10 milligram and 25 milligram, and complete amenorrhea was observed in 25 milligram group and scanty and infrequent in 10 milligram group. Relief of pressure symptoms was 98% in 25 and 72% in 10 milligram. So mifepristone is as effective as GnRH agonist. Mifepristone is better tolerated than GnRH agonist with fewer side effects. The problem with GnRH is the severe hot flushes and severe hypoestrogenism. Mifepristone doesn't cause this severe level of hypoestrogenism. Lesser recurrence rate with mifepristone compared to GnRH agonist group. Mifepristone is more effective in decreasing blood flow to uterus than GnRH agonist. This was another study from Ernakulam, South Kerala. Patients treated with tablet mifepristone 25 milligram once daily for 3 months, and it was compared with leuprolide acetate depot 3.75 once a month for 3 months. A marked relief with significant decrease in visual analog score in both the groups was seen, and treatment with mifepristone 25 daily for 3 months significantly reduced bleeding, uterine volume and myoma volume. So efficacy wise these were at par, but I have gone through other studies which had showed the side effects, the adverse events with leuprolide acetate are much more. So this was another study from Odisha, same thing. Fibroid size from 2.5 to 10 centimeters were seen in 50 patients, 25 milligram per day orally for 3 months, and the volume of fibroids definitely reduced, and the conclusion was it can be a good choice, especially in perimenopausal women in whom myomas would regress after menopause and patients who want to avoid surgery. And perimenopausal is the word, very young patients we can always try, but it has been seen that once we, after some time we have to stop the treatment 3 to 6 months, and once again the problems may recur, but in the perimenopausal women she may go into menopause and her problems will subside permanently. So this was another study. 45 women received 25 milligram mifepristone daily, and the volume of myoma reduced significantly. Okay, the volume of myoma was seen before and after treatment, and the improvement in pain related symptoms was significant. Okay, all these improved after 6 months. See, menorrhagia, dysmenorrhea, pelvic pain, backache and urinary retention also, and no major side effects were observed during the course of the study, and the drug was well tolerated. That is very, very important. This was another study from All India Institute involving Dr. Alka Kripalani as well. Low dose mifepristone in medical management of uterine leiomyoma, and experience from a tertiary care hospital from North India to evaluate efficacy and safety of low dose mifepristone in medical management of myoma, and to compare two doses 10 and 25. The sizes which were studies of myoma was 5 to 15 centimeters of 143 women, and the treatment duration was 3 months. Two groups, one group 25, another group 10, and the outcomes measured were reduction in myoma and uterine volume, pain using VAS, reduction in blood loss using PBSE, endometrial biopsy. If you see, this is the reduction in blood loss by PBSE score. So significant reduction in mean PBSE score in both the groups. Okay, but then you see after 3 months of treatment, after you stop the treatment, once again the bleeding starts 3 months post treatment, but they may be less than what it was before. And with mifepristone, a sizable percentage, 95% of in group 1 and 90% in group 2 developed amenorrhea, which reverted after median 34 days of stopping therapy. And there was significant decrease in the volume of myoma as well in both the groups. Here it was decreased by 35.7%, 25 milligram group, and 10 milligram it was decreased by 22.5 milligram percent. And as we saw in the earlier studies also, marked relief with significant decrease in VAS score in both the groups, marked relief from all these pains, dysmenorrhea, pain, backache, dyspareunia. There was a remarkable improvement. And as a consequence of mifepristone and amenorrhea also, there was a significant rise in hemoglobin levels in both the groups with treatment. So one important thing, you see, no significant change in estradiol levels in both groups. Okay, and estradiol levels were maintained at a certain level, but this is the problem when you treat with GnRH analogs, the estradiol level comes down drastically. And repeat endometrial histopathology didn't reveal any complex hyperplasia or atypia in either group. So the conclusion was mifepristone 10 or 25 milligram caused symptomatic relief with 90% reduction in menstrual blood. Greater myoma size reduction occurred with 25 milligram dose. Amenorrhea was developed in 90 to 95% patients, which was reversible. And mifepristone can be a reasonable choice for management of uterine leiomyoma, as it is administered orally, cost effective, and has mild side effects. And it can be a reasonable choice, especially in perimenopausal women, as I was saying, in whom myomas would regress after menopause, and unmarried patients also who want to avoid surgery. Now, this was another study from Haryana, role of low-dose mifepristone in management of uterine leiomyoma. 50 women with symptomatic fibroids, 10 milligram per day for 3 days, and the outcome seen were uterine fibroid volumes and menstrual and pressure symptoms. You see, there was a significant decrease in uterine volume and fibroid volume as well from month 1 to month 3, and there was a significant reduction in all these symptoms: menometrorrhagia, polymenorrhea, and dysmenorrhea. So the author concluded low-dose mifepristone had a shrinkage effect on the fibroids, which was maintained for as long as the medication was used. It did allow time to correct anemia and plan surgery. That is also very important. Quite often you will find large myoma with severe anemia. In fact, I had quite a few patients coming with 5 grams, 6 grams hemoglobin. And if you allow time, give mifepristone, then her and along with the hematinics, iron, her hemoglobin gets corrected preoperatively. This was another study from Delhi. Low-dose mifepristone in treatment of uterine leiomyoma, randomized double-blind placebo-controlled clinical trial. 40 women with symptomatic fibroids, 10 milligram or placebo for 3 months. And the outcomes: leiomyoma-related symptoms, uterine leiomyoma, and largest leiomyoma volumes, endometrial biopsy also. So the mean blood loss declined by 94.8% in mifepristone group at 3 months, and 84.2% patients attained amenorrhea. Mean hemoglobin increased from 9.5 to 11.2 in the mifepristone group. Obviously, in the placebo group, hemoglobin won't increase. And there was complete relief of dysmenorrhea, which occurred in 80% of women. And if you see the uterine volume, the leiomyoma volume, and the largest, in a case of multiple leiomyomas, the largest leiomyoma volume, all had decreased significantly in the mifepristone group, but nothing happened in the placebo group. And the most important thing was no side effects like hot flushes, loss of libido, headache, fatigue, nausea, vomiting, weakness were seen in either group. Hyperplasia without atypia noted in participants, however, reverted back to normal as observed upon histopathology. So conclusion was 10 milligram mifepristone for 3 months is effective in reducing MBL, increasing hemoglobin, and reducing uterine leiomyoma volume. Okay, and effects of low dose oral mifepristone, a lot of studies, I think, but then you see effect on menstrual blood loss, it decreases significantly, and the myoma volume also decreases significantly. A case was reported in AICG 2020. A 48-year-old lady with HMB and severe anemia with a uterine volume of 592 cc and multiple fibroids, largest being about 299 cc, and surgery was a risky option due to all these comorbidities that she had. And the treatment with 25 milligram per day orally for 3 months was given. The uterine volume reduced to 394 cc, volume of largest fibroid reduced to 157 cc, and amenorrhea at the end of 3 months was reached, and hemoglobin also increased to 9.5 grams. So for patients who are high risk, unwilling for surgery, mifepristone can be considered as a safe alternative. Now, this is an important area where we are coming. We all know the advantages and disadvantages of GnRH analogs and their comparison with mifepristone. But when it comes to comparison with ulipristal, both are tablets and both are taken once daily for 3 to 6 months. Which to give? Okay, so this was compared to compare the effect of mifepristone and ulipristal on symptomatic fibroids in two subgroups. Both are SPRMs, less than 3 centimeters, 3 to 5 centimeters. Well, prospective case control study, 40 patients divided in two groups. One was ulipristal acetate 10. Normally we give 5, but this was done with 10, mifepristone 25. And the outcomes seen were reduction in fibroid size and improvement in symptoms. Okay, in this study, the results that were seen were mifepristone caused greater reduction in fibroid size and symptoms in less than 3 centimeter subgroup. Okay, there was more than 40% reduction in fibroid size, 30% reduction in pain, 50% reduction in menorrhagia. And in this specific study, they concluded that mifepristone was found to be more effective than ulipristal when used for fibroids. But I have gone through studies also where it was seen that ulipristal caused more decrease in volume and favorable findings in relation to mifepristone. But even if we feel that both drugs are comparable, let's go through these advice from European Medicine Agency. Okay, on 18th May 2018, the Pharmacovigilance Risk Assessment Committee recommended new measures to minimize risk of rare but serious liver injury with ulipristal. Okay, because I think we all had heard about a few liver injury cases. Okay, so at that point of time, in 18th May 2018, PRAC had advised, after considering all the evidence, that the medicine must not be used in women with liver problems and that certain other patients may start new treatment courses provided they have regular liver tests. And we had started doing liver function test while the patient was on LFT. In fact, I had used ulipristal extensively and I got, I think, a few cases where I used to do liver function and they had come with increased bilirubin, increased liver enzymes also. So from 18th May 2018, if you see 13th March 2020, this year, I went through this when I was preparing a presentation on using ulipristal as an emergency contraceptive. As an emergency contraceptive, there is no problems, but if you have to use regularly, the PRAC recommended women to stop taking 5 milligram ulipristal acetate for uterine fibroids while a safety review is ongoing. So they started a safety review, and during the ongoing review, they had advised women to stop taking ulipristal, and no new patients should start treatment with the medicines, which will be temporarily suspended throughout the European Union during the review. Well, I had gone through this around 4 to 5 months ago, but yesterday when I was studying this comparison between mifepristone and ulipristal, I searched the internet for the results of this review. Okay, and then I found out this came out in 4th September 2020, and PRAC recommends revoking marketing authorization of ulipristal acetate for uterine fibroids. So a review by EMA Safety Committee has confirmed that 5 milligram ulipristal acetate used for the treatment of symptoms of uterine fibroids can cause liver injury, including the need for liver transplantation. Therefore, the PRAC has therefore recommended the revocation of the marketing authorization of these medicines. Okay, so in fact, as far as I am concerned, I have stopped using or advising or prescribing ulipristal acetate for treatment of fibroids. So the only drug, the convenient drug that remains is mifepristone. So handling the cases of uterine fibroids, a few examples, only one example. 48-year-old woman with heavy menstrual bleeding and dysmenorrhea. Ultrasound revealed 2 intramural fibroids, 3.3 and 3.6 centimeter. And she wants to preserve her uterus, doesn't want surgery. Hemoglobin was okay, 10.3 grams. On pelvic ultrasound, bladder was normal, uterus normal with myometrium 4.5 millimeter thick, and well-defined lesions in the endometrium 3.3 and 3.6 centimeters, that is fibroids. Both ovaries appeared normal. For premenopausal women with symptomatic fibroids wanting to preserve uterus, you can give medical therapies or surgical therapy. Medical therapies include LNG IUDs if the uterine cavity is not too much distorted, GnRH analogs, and SPRMs. So treatment options for this case: no elective surgery if patient is unwilling. Medical treatment, mifepristone can be an excellent option, can achieve reduction in fibroid size and symptomatic relief, and can avoid the need of surgery. So clinical data. So long we discussed a lot of studies, and this is the summary of all the clinical data, and I'm not going through the details, but if you see, all these studies show that the fibroids with regard to uterine volume, leiomyoma volume, largest leiomyoma volume, quality of life, and then pain, dysmenorrhea, all these improved, okay, significantly with mifepristone. And this is the international clinical trial summary, where also more or less it reflected, the Indian studies reflected the international trials also. And lesser recurrence rate with mifepristone than GnRH analog. Okay. So safety of mifepristone in uterine fibroid patients in clinical trials: mifepristone in a dose of up to 50 milligram per day reported safe and well tolerated. No atypical hyperplasia. PAEC, basically by now we know it's a benign condition. Endometrial biopsies showed no premalignant changes with 50 milligram per day mifepristone for 3 months. No risk of decrease in BMD and osteoporosis as happens in long-term GnRH analogs, and studies reveal little to no elevation in liver enzymes. And therefore advantages is it's as effective as GnRH analog, no effect on BMD, no risk of osteoporosis, lesser side effects, oral route of administration once a day with good compliance, allow time to correct anemia and plan surgery, menses reverted after 34 around days of stopping therapy, menstrual cycles are established, lesser recurrence than GnRH analogs, and improves health related quality of life. So the dosage, we know, once daily after food, should be started on day 1 to 7 of menstrual cycle for better results, and should be taken on same time every day. Minimum treatment duration should be around 3 to 6 months. Thank you very much for a patient hearing, and any questions I would most welcome, love to answer them.
Thank you so much, sir, for your time and for the valuable insights that you have given on the pulse of uterine fibroids. Doctors, you can put your questions in the chat box or in the Q&A section. Dr. Udayan Sarkar will be happy to answer all. As of now, we have not got any questions, sir.
There are actually 2 doses, 10 milligram and 25 milligram. What frequently we get questions when to use 10 milligram, when to use 25 milligram. So 10 milligram small fibroids, single fibroids, 10 milligram is well tolerated, and for 25 milligram multiple fibroids, large fibroids. In fact, 5 milligram doses have also been used in a study I have seen. I was going through a study yesterday where they have given 50 milligram weekly for 6 months. Once a week, 50 milligram for 6 months with good results. The study had concluded. So different dosage schedules can be used.
So, but 50 milligram is a quite high dose, right?
50 milligram weekly, once a week.
Okay.
That's the study that I had gone through. We have a question, Dulalda, welcome. When repeat USG should be done? Well, normally, you can do in the meantime as well, because as you saw in the studies, mostly the studies used from 3 months to 6 months, and for study purposes, They measured the uterine volume, leiomyoma volume after 1 month, after 2 months, after 3 months. But if the patient is clinically improving, we can always do it at the end of 3 months. That's all. I mean, instead of repeatedly doing it monthly, if suppose fibroid patients comes to us definitely with menorrhagia, metrorrhagia and whatever, if the dysmenorrhea, whatever, and if these symptoms improve, then why to repeat monthly? We can always do repeat USG after the end of treatment, 3 months. And we, along with the reduction in uterine volume, leiomyoma volume, we need to study the endometrium as well by a transvaginal sonography. Well, when will you prefer surgery and low dose mifepristone? Any specific fibroid size? Well, that's a good question. You know, one thing I would like to say, mifepristone is not a magic drug or wonder drug that you have permanent solution to the fibroid. Okay. Well, definitely, as long as you use mifepristone, mostly studies have mentioned 3 to 6 months. As long as you use mifepristone, you will be getting results. But these results are not permanent. Okay. There may be a slight reduction in the leiomyoma volume which will persist, but mostly it has been seen that if the patient is middle-aged or young, she'll once again be getting back the symptoms. Okay. The advantage with mifepristone is in perimenopausal age group, as I had mentioned, if you continue with mifepristone, control the bleeding, reduce the fibroid size, most likely you will reach a stage when the patient won't have her bleeding problems, won't have her pain problems, and ultimately she will reach menopause. Another group is, for small fibroids in the young age group, okay, we can definitely treat them. But if the fibroids are really large, I don't think they can be treated by mifepristone alone. Surgery has to be done. And as to your question, any specific cutoff size, well, I won't go into the cutoff size exactly. The location wise also, if you have an absolutely fibroid in the submucous location, okay, even 4 or 5 centimeter fibroid will cause too much of a problem, and maybe mifepristone will temporarily improve symptoms, but then problems will continue. So you don't have a cutoff size as well, but it has been seen less than 3 to 4 centimeters fibroid, uh, you know, they are very well amenable to treatment. And in fact, fibroids, if they are not causing symptoms, we might as well leave them. There's no need for surgery. But if the fibroids are causing, suppose, say, recurrent pregnancy loss or infertility, and we can always give a trial of mifepristone and see whether they are getting pregnant or not. If not, then ultimately we may have to do a surgery. For big fibroids, definitely you have to do a surgery. Mifepristone is not the answer.
Thank you, sir. Thank you, sir.
We have other questions as well. Which patients are contraindicated for using mifepristone? Well, I won't say contraindicated exactly. You may not get the results. As we were just discussing, if we have big fibroids, okay, you can prescribe, but don't think that mifepristone will cause the fibroid to absolutely shrink and the uterus to come down to its normal volume. Never. If you have an 18 weeks, 20 week size fibroid, ultimately in young patients or in the reproductive age group causing symptoms, you will have to do surgery, myomectomy, laparoscopic myomectomy, or a conventional myomectomy, whatever. But then the advantage of mifepristone is, you know, mostly the patient comes, as at least I have got many patients who have come to me with hemoglobin 5 to 6. So I had given them mifepristone just to improve their hemoglobin, improve their symptomatology. And after giving 3 months, you know, their hemoglobin level improves remarkably. They are symptom free also. And they are happy with the treatment. Ultimately, when you do the surgery, it's easy for you to do the surgery. And the next question is, can it be used in infertility patient? If yes, definitely. In infertility patient, definitely you can use mifepristone. Okay. Provided, not provided, maybe we are not finding any cause of infertility. You have to be absolutely sure that there are no other causes of infertility. It may be the fibroid, or it may be you know, unexplained. Okay, so if you have a small fibroid and she's suffering from infertility, we can always give a trial of mifepristone for 3 months and then wait for her to get pregnant spontaneously. That we can always do. Well,
Doctors, are there any more questions? Dr. Udayan has answered the questions which were asked.
yeah, I have answered all of the questions that I have seen in the question and answer section and also in the chat box. And once again, I want to highlight, you know, I don't know how many have gone through the Ulipristal latest reports. As I have mentioned, personally speaking, I have stopped prescribing Ulipristal acetate because of the various reports coming. And in fact, I have my own few patients who had increased bilirubin and increased liver function test enzymes, in whom I had to stop. So definitely my first choice nowadays, if I have to treat medically, I go in for mifepristone. In fact, 10 milligram, if you compare with 10 milligram, 25 milligram, both of them are excellent in controlling your bleeding also. Okay, 10 milligram daily also controls bleeding remarkably. Okay, pain, bleeding, everything also. So you can always start with 10 if the fibroid is, if there are not multiple fibroids and if the fibroid is not too big. Okay, do we have any other question? Well, this is a very important question. Thank you, Dr. Rani. I was expecting this question. Has it any role in the treatment of adenomyosis? Well, in fact, yesterday also I was going through this, you know, the role of mifepristone in adenomyosis. It's now said, if you go through the etiology, you know, fibroid, the progesterone, you know, acts through its receptors in the fibroid, which it seems that the fibroid causes, has more progesterone receptors, and progesterone causes the growth of fibroid. Okay, and mifepristone is an SPRM. But, you know, people have been giving mifepristone in adenomyosis patients as well. Okay, we don't know as yet whether adenomyosis, you know, adenomyotic nodules contains more progesterone receptors or not. But if you go through the net, you will get a few studies where they have given mifepristone in adenomyosis patients. I was going through one study where they had taken tissues, and they have done in vitro as well as clinical studies, and both of them they have got results. So definitely, in fact, frankly speaking, I have also used mifepristone in adenomyosis patients, and you know, a few of the patients, the control of, you know, the uterus won't, the reduction in uterine volume may not be significant, but you can always control the bleeding. Okay, you can always control the bleeding with mifepristone at least for a few months. So the study is on. Okay, thank you for this question. Role of mifepristone in adenomyosis. This study is going on, and if you search through the net, you will find recent studies and recent clinical trials which are being published. Thank you for this lively discussion. And
Thank you so much, sir. Thanks for your time. And I really like to thank you for the wonderful insights you have given on uterine fibroids. And also thank our audience for being a part of it and being very interactive for this webinar. Thank you so much.
thank you, and good night, and best wishes for Kali Puja and Deepavali once again.
I wish you happy Diwali. Thank you so much, sir.
Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Take care. Good night.
Okay, then can I leave the screen now?
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
Okay.
You can log out.
Thank you.
Pratik.